Hello, this is Ernesto Lechner, and this is the Autry Sizzling Summer Nights Backstage. I'm very happy today because we have a distinguished guest in our show today, Chino Espinoza, who has always been a guest at the Sizzling Summer Nights every summer with his amazing salsa band. Chino, welcome.
Thank you, Ernesto. It's a pleasure for us to be here.
And of course, we have you as a guest every single year at the Autry Sizzling Summer Nights because the band that you have, the salsa orchestra that you've put together, is just extraordinary. This based on the sound of the trombones and this incredible percussion section. You always have a
Thank you.
great pianist, and of course your vocals. So tell me, what are the key ingredients of a good salsa orchestra?
Well, Ernesto, salsa is that. Salsa is just a mix. That's the way I saw it since the very beginning. And my idea was to do so, to combine different countries, different flavors, and put it together. And that reality is that that's the value, that's the name of salsa. It's a mix of flavors. And in salsa music, it's exactly the same. We have Peruvians, Venezuelans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Colombians, and Costa Ricans, and Mexicans. I mean, what else can you get out of that mix? Salsa.
In fact, I wanted to mention this that many people mistakenly believe that salsa is Cuban music. But I think the story of salsa is more complex because out of Cuba and those basic dance formats, the music migrated to New York and to Puerto Rico, to Colombia. And something I wanted to mention is that, in fact, you are from Costa Rica. The salsa that you prepare is as authentic as it comes. So tell me a little bit about that, of how salsa became more like an Afro-Caribbean, Pan-American phenomenon.
Yeah, this is, something that has been always a myth. It's like, is it Puerto Rican? Is it Cuban? Is it from New York? The reality is, like you said, and this is what I believe, based on my experience of listening to salsa and studying some salsa, because when you're in this business, you have to study as well. And salsa is a mix that I believe was created in New York, based on the Cuban danzón, the Cuban son, the Puerto Rican bomba, Puerto Rican plena, all these rhythms put together. But it was pretty much back in the 50s, I want to say, or 60s, when in New York it started blowing, on these clubs. When Tito Puente, which everybody knows and believes, Tito Puente is one of the founders of the salsa music. And it's true. Tito Puente was just a drummer. He was raised in Puerto Rico, and then he was brought to New York when he was teenage, something like that, and he started performing all this music based on the Cuban roots. And he mentioned it. If you listen to Tito Puente talking about his beginning, he said so. He said, I learned from these great percussionists that were Cuban musicians. It's a mix. In New York, back in the 50s, people started dancing this new rhythm that they couldn't really call it danzón or son or guaracha. They looked for something else, and that's what they decided, that this is actually a mix of different rhythms. Why don't call it salsa, just like a mix of different tastes. When I was growing up, my dad was always listening to Cuban music and Puerto Rican music at the same time. This is in the 70s when I remember I was a little boy trying to get into be a DJ, and I was very attracted to singing since I was in elementary school. So, being 8 years old, I was already singing. In Costa Rica, yes, there's always been an influence of music from Cuba, but the biggest influence in music in Costa Rica comes from Mexico. When I was growing up, I remember singing just music from, Jose Luis Rodriguez, El Puma from Venezuela. That's the music I grew up listening to. But at the same time, my dad was always pushing the salsa on me. This is already my dad following Tito Puente, following El Gran Combo, following Oscar de Leon, and putting it in my table. I wanted to go listen to Michael Jackson album and the record player, and I asked my dad, Dad, can you play this for me? And he said, yes, but first you're going to sit down and you're going to listen to my music for half an hour. then I'll let you listen to your music. There's people that says in Costa Rica you could hear danzón, you can hear son, cubano, and all these rhythms, but that's not what I grew up with. I grew up with a little bit more newer version of that, which was already Oscar de Leon, Hector Lavoe, and all those things. So that's how I kind of became aware of the salsa rhythm. And that's what I try to do with my band.
It's interesting to me because you mentioned Tito Puente, an artist who was New Yorican. You mentioned El Gran Combo, an orchestra that has always been based in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
And then you mentioned Oscar de Leon, who's Venezuelan. Who was the one artist who inspired you to want to become one salsa star yourself?
I will say that there are a couple of them because when I started singing salsa, it's exactly when I immigrated to the US. I did a couple of songs in Costa Rica with a band that was 100% salsa. And when my dad wanted me to sing with them, I sang a song from El Gran Combo. But that's only because my dad told me, learn this song and they know it, they will play it. So I played once. And
which one?
Verano Nueva York from El Gran Combo, exactly.
Classic.
Exactly, a classic. And when I play that, the band, they were like, wow, you know, you really sound like you're a salsero. In my mind, I had no idea what they were saying. All I did is just memorize the song up and down from beginning to the end. Many years passed, and when I came here, the band that I came to play with was Opa Opa, because they were Costa Ricans and they knew my father, and you know, they got me into the salsa. So I started listening to songs that I could sing that they had. Lalo Rodriguez, Eddie Santiago, Luis Enrique. But I've always felt very attracted to Hector Lavoe music and Chino Espinoza. Those two singers I fell in love with. At some point I felt very identified with their voices, and I started studying Chino Espinoza so I could learn how to become a sonero, because that's a totally different thing than singing. So yeah, I will say Chino Espinoza and Hector Lavoe, because I felt very, very attached to his voice.
Do you realize that you mentioned two singers, the awesome Chino Espinoza and the legendary Hector Lavoe, who are both in a way like the tropical equivalent of a rock star? They're almost like rock and roll stars. Do you agree with me on that?
Yes. These are guys that for sure will stay in the salsa scene forever. Not only in the salsa world, but all around the world, you know. People know who Hector Lavoe is.
I wanted to ask you about something that has always fascinated me about the art of salsa singing, and something I really appreciate. And I see this in vocalists, both male and female. When they're singing a salsa tune with a good orchestra backing them up, you get this feeling, almost like a danger, almost like you're on the edge of the cliff and you're about to fall, but then you stop yourself. And then you get closer to the cliff, you're about to fall. And then it's like this frenzy, it's like this calculated fever where it's at all times, it's completely unpredictable, and it creates this constant syncopation with the music where it sort of goes out of the rhythm and it goes in, it accelerates, and then it decreases the rhythm. And I once asked Fe Cortijo, who was the singer with the Cortijo band in the 70s and 80s, an amazing singer. So I said, how do you create this feeling of danger? And she said, that's called cantar con clave. So singing with the rhythmic concept of Cuban music, that's the clave, right? In 3, 2, or 2, 3. Do you understand what I'm asking here? And how do you achieve that amazing effect?
Ernesto, that's a very, 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 very important question. And I'm going to tell you why. A lot of people can sing salsa, but not a lot of people sing salsa. When you sing salsa, you don't only worry about the melody, but you have to learn the rhythm part of it. And that's when it becomes very, very hard. That's when you realize whether you can sing salsa or not, because salsa singing is not for everybody. I have friends that are unbelievable singers, but when they sing salsa, they don't sound like they're singing salsa. The clave, in my opinion, is something that not only you learn, but you have to feel it. You have to have it in you. I don't think I could teach somebody to sing salsa if they're not feeling it. I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I started to become a music teacher. That was my major. My instrument was the vocals. I became an opera singer. When I was singing there, and I was teaching how to play guitar, I was teaching how to do warm-ups and vocals and stuff like that. I can teach you that. I can teach that to anybody. I can teach you how to do exercises on the guitar, but I cannot teach you how to sing in clave, because that, in my opinion, that's something you have to feel. You have to have. I could be here trying to do the clave to you, and try to teach you how to sing. But if you don't feel that, you're never gonna make it. I don't know if you're born with it or it's something that since you've been listening to it all your life, you already develop it. My son, as you know, my son is part of my band. He was born in the U.S. He spoke Spanish the first years of his life because that's the only thing we could speak, me and my wife. So we had to speak Spanish. And then when we became a little bit more familiar with the language, we started speaking to him in English. So, only the beginning of his school years is when he was speaking Spanish. And then when he became 18, he said, Dad, I want to sing with the band. And I told my wife, well, that's great, but is he going to make it? First of all, singing in Spanish, second, singing in clave. And I told him, of course, yeah, you can sing with us. And I started with some merengues, some cumbia, stuff that you don't really need to feel the clave. When he started singing salsa, he got it right away. So in my opinion, it had a lot to do with what he grew up with. He was with me in the concert since he was 1 year old. So he's been with that all his life, just as I was with my dad. So is it something that you learn or you get used to it? Or is it something that you're born with? I really wouldn't know the answer, but I can tell you that if you are not a salsa singer, you cannot just come and sing if you don't have the feeling. That's the bottom line.
So just for the people who are not familiar with it, can you play the clave beat so that people can understand what we're talking about?
Well, there's a couple of the 2-3 or 3-2, and it's very simple. One is pa 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 pa, and the other one is pa 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 pa. So as you can see, it's kind of like the same, but you start and the opposite end of it. And that's basically, the difference between what they call Cuban clave or Puerto Rican clave. I don't put my hands on fire to tell you this is Cuban and this is Puerto Rican because I really don't know. But I know that that's how we know it in the music business. You say, give me the Cuban clave. Pa, 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 pa. And basically every Cuban band that is nowadays, because obviously this is different than the danzón and then the charanga and all this, but that's what we call the Cuban clave. And if you want the 3-2, that will be the other one. Pa, 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 pa. And that's like what you hear most in the Puerto Rico area salsa.
This beat, this simple beat that you just played, is the rhythmic foundation. In fact, the entire musical foundation of every good salsa song. Is that correct?
That is correct. Don't forget that salsa, as we know it, and even danzón and all these rhythms that came from Cuba, the origin of all this, they come from Africa, from the immigration of Africans that came to the Caribbean. They had to become Christians and blah, blah, blah. They cannot perform their religions, but they kept their music as part of their religion, so secretly they kept continuing doing their religion, but in form of music. And these instruments, these claves, these rhythms come from there.
And the second thing I wanted to point out, because most people who are beginners in the salsa world don't understand, is that clave pattern that you just played, it is not actually performed by the percussionist, but it's still there. Even though it's not performed, you can hear it if you know the clave, you can still hear implicitly in every tune. Isn't that strange how that works out?
Well, it's based on the piano and the bass. Like you said, maybe it's not the drummer that is doing that little clave, but when the piano player is playing, the same thing with the bass. The bass can be doing pum pum, bidim pim pim, pum pum, bidim pim pim. So that's why when you are listening to salsa, your back of your head is feeling it, and that's how the dancers base themselves on the dancing. When they are looking for the clave. A lot of times you see somebody when he's learning and they say, "But I don't see the clave. The guy is not playing the clave. The timbalero should be playing the clave." So if you listen to a whole song, you'll see a timbalero going in and out of the clave, because he has it in his blood, in his rhythm, he has it. So he knows where it is, but when he's busy doing something else, he can be and that's everything that he's doing, just like the bass is doing, he's doing the clave.
I want to ask you about something that, to me, as far as your orchestra is concerned, makes all the difference in the world. And I want to tell you that when I started seeing salsa bands live, I think the first few times I saw orchestras that had trumpets and maybe one or two trombones and maybe a saxophone. And it was that sort of that richly layered, that variety in the sound created by the brass. So I kept seeing bands that had sort of that setup, and I got used to it. And then I remember the day like it was yesterday. Then one day, I don't remember which band it was, I went to see a band. And when they came out, there were no trumpets, there were no saxophone. It was only 3 or 4 trombones. A couple of things happened with this. Because you had only trombones doing the riffs, it's like the space of the music opened up. The sound became thicker and fatter in a wonderful way. It became funkier. It was very funky. It was almost violent. It was, to me, it was rock and roll. This wasn't salsa anymore for me. This was rock and roll like Led Zeppelin. It was like that. Because of that choice to have, a band with all the trimmings, to have your singers and your bass and your piano but then you had trombones. And my musical life was forever changed with this moment. Of course, that's what you do. You have usually, I think many times that I've seen you, your sound is trombone. So tell me a little bit about that. Why did you do that? And do you identify with what I'm saying about that difference?
Totally, Ernesto, totally. Back in the days when the salsa started, popping up as a salsa rhythm in New York, there were a couple of bands that did only trombones. Willie Colon band, but back in the days, the bands were smaller. They were only 2 trombones, and maybe about 6 or 7 members. Then became more popular when Eddie Santiago and this romantic music started playing, romantic salsa back in the 80s, I want to say. Eddie Santiago did that. He brought back the trombone sound. I don't know if I ever mentioned to you, but I worked with Eddie Santiago for many years. I was his background singer. When I was doing Eddie Santiago's band, I loved the sound of the trombones, but I thought it was too mellowed. So because back in the days, it was romantic music was the thing. So when I made my band, or me and my brothers sat together and say, let's make a band, I wanted it to do the trombones sound like Willie Colon, but I wanted to have the power of the whole section like Eddie Santiago style. So that's when we decided to do an old trombone sound, but and instead of being very mellow and romantic, we wanted it to be Willie Colon style, rough and dangerous, like you say, almost scary. I found great trombone players, some Cuban guys as well, that they were monsters on the trombone, and they expressed their feeling on the trombone. And that's when my band became very popular. It was very loud, but at the same time, very mellow, because the trombone is not an instrument that will hurt your ears. It's actually a very melodic instrument. So I start getting back feedbacks from the club owners and the club engineers, sound engineers, telling me, "Oh man, I love your band because it's loud, but it's not hurting anybody's ears." Like the trumpets, they say that it's really hard to equalize because it sounds is so pitchy, so high. So they started coming with those comments to me, and I saw that I was going the right way. but at the same time, we're pushing the New York style, and instead of the Puerto Rican, the slow music or romantic music sound, but more New York old style, Willie Colon, where the trombone, instead of doing, they'll be like, that's the difference. That's what I like. So yes, I try to adopt both the little romantic, because my voice is very melodic, so very romantic, but at the same time, we put a little bit of effort and I would say strength on the trombone, and it makes a difference. That's how I got it.
And here's another new thing that you started doing in recent years that absolutely killed me. For me, it became like a game changer. You started performing gigs where you don't stop between songs. You just play, one song ends and right away. And I've seen Oscar de Leon also do this thing, where it's just like 1.5 hours, 1 hour, whatever it is, of continuous, it's like the sonic attack. And this little detail of not stopping between songs changes everything. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's true. Probably one of the things that made me realize that was seeing live concerts like Oscar de Leon and a Grand Combo. Watching other artists, I learned that it is possible to do it, and I wanted to do it. And yes, we started applying it here in LA. I gotta tell you, some places don't like that because they say that some people like to change couples in between and blah, blah, blah. And I tell them that doesn't really make a difference, because you can stop dancing anytime you want. But to me, especially when we're doing a concert, it's the best way to maintain the people in the mood. You know how many times you are, as a performer, you're worried about seeing that dance floor full. And sometimes you play a song that is amazing, like that everybody knows and everybody wants to dance. But then the next song, maybe a song that nobody really knows, and they don't come up and dance. But if you don't stop and you keep playing, and you just put them together, that song becomes really, really part of that really popular song. But when you're playing all straight, you're in the same mood. You keep going and keep going. You want more and more until you finish and you say, okay, we're done. And they're like, are you serious? I want more. That's what I was looking for. That's what I like.
Chino, what are we gonna be listening to today? What do you have for us? Is it a song that you wrote?
A song we're gonna be performing for you guys, and my guys are ready and they are so excited because we haven't been on a stage for months, as you know, for all these problems with the COVID-19, and me being a high-risk person because of my heart surgery. My son, his wife is expecting a baby. It's my first grandkid. So he is very excited and he is very careful. So we've been totally, I would say 100% safe. We're not doing no concerts, no videos, no nothing. So this is going to be actually the first time that we're going to be on a stage or in a little room all together. We just hope that you guys like this and enjoy it, because for us, it's more than a pleasure. It's to see our brothers, our family. Our band is our family. Most of these guys have been with me for over 10 years. So yeah, we are very excited. We're going to be performing a song that I wrote that is it's called Salsa de la Más Buena. And we hope you guys like it.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Chino, and Salsa de la Más Buena.
Thank you, Ernesto. Thank you, the Autry Museum, for inviting us as always on this Sizzling Nights. And we hope that next year we can all be together at the Autry Museum. God bless you all. ¿Dónde está el cariño? All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. So now it's time for us to show you what we've been speaking about is salsa. Salsa, as you know it, as we all know it, the energetic rhythm started with the clave. We're gonna have a little rumba here coming from Cuba con la tumbadora Santiago Santiute. De Venezuela, en el bongo, Calico Bustamante. De Puerto Rico, of course, Georgie Lopez on baby bass. Our musical director,
Chicago, bringing up from Cuba, Orlando, and de Colombia, Juan Carlitos Villaquirá. And my son, Chino Espinoza, and myself, Chino Espinoza, y los dueños del sol. Salsa me ha pedido el pueblo que quiere escuchar. Ay, salsa, 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 me ha dicho mi gente que quiere bailar. Como yo soy sonero en la salsa que le vengo a improvisar. Como yo soy sonero le traigo la salsa rica que le quiero improvisar. Traigo salsa para ti, bailo salsa de verdad. Juancito, preocupé. Traigo salsa de veras, salsa candela caballero, salsa candela de la buena. Salsa rica en Puerto Rico, Colombia y de Venezuela. Pero no podemos olvidar, caballero, salsa de Cuba de la buena con candela. Voy abriendo puertas a todo el mundo, pa' que mi salsa tiene vela. Pongo mi salsa donde bailo, pongo mi salsa por doquiera. ¡Salsa! ¡Chao!
The Autry Museum of the American West thanks our members and supporters.